Hello everyone, Jean-Michel Trou here, and today I'm making the tutorial video for positioning as asked by the devs to help the new wave of players adapt to this new game they discover. And what we will be covering is how to position yourselves into a game, what is the range of a unit. We'll talk about the concept of front line, of back line, of packing versus spreading, and you'll learn a lot of new things that will maybe help you win games, or maybe not. And for that we will use the team planner that we have here. Beautiful feature. Let's just hope it loads correctly. So basically this is a Pokemon Auto Chess terrain. When you play, this is the grid on which you can place your units. As you can see, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 columns and 1, 2, 3 rows. So we can already divide this board on several sections. We have first the right side and the left side. Pretty obvious, pretty basic, and it doesn't change much, but still you can make a few things with this distribution. Also, you have the front line. This is the line that is the closest to your opponent's board. That will be over here. You have your middle line, which is in between. And then you have the back line, which is the furthest away from your opponent's board. So what is the difference between all of these lines? Well, the front line will contain the Pokemons who will fight the fastest. Like, they will meet the opponents first, so they will take all of the aggro, they will get hit first, and they will also technically be able to hit the opponents first too. On the contrary, the back line is further away, which means that it is technically the last line that will actually get focused and hit by your opponent. They will have to kill the entire front line and then the middle line before they can reach the back line. So these Pokemons are technically the safest on your board, unless something weird happens. So these are the very basics: front, middle, back, left, right, and then just like that we are good to go. So how do you know where you want to place your Pokemon when you buy them? Let's, for example, take the fire composition, because I know that is something that is often pretty popular with newcomers. And let's say you get Charmander, right? This unit. Will I place Charmander into the back line, or into the front line, or into the middle line? Well, the main thing that I am looking for are the stats, and in particular this one over here. This stat, represented by an arrow with a fist, is your range. The one over here means that the range of Charmander is 1, and thus it can only hit the unit directly in front of it or onto the sides here and there. If it is here, it cannot hit any unit that is further than this square. It cannot hit a unit that is standing here, for example. It will first have to walk before it hits it. So, because it's only one range, this is what we call a melee Pokemon. We will likely put it in the front line, so it can instantly start hitting the opponent front line when the fight starts, right? Another thing that we need to look for are these stats. This is the defense, and this is the special defense. We can also look at the HP. So this resumes how tanky your Pokemon will be. The higher these stats, the more hits it can take before it dies. So having a unit that has a lot of defense and special defense means that this unit is probably going to be played in the front line. If we play, for example, the Torkoal, look at this defense. This guy has a lot of defense, which means he can take a ton of auto attacks before it dies. So, because it is both tanky with a lot of HP and one ranged, it is a good idea to place it in the front line. On the contrary, let's say we evolved Charmander into Charmeleon. As you can see, Charmeleon has less HP and a lot less defense than Torkoal. So what you may want to do is having Torkoal here in the front line, and further back in the middle line you have your Charmeleon. So what is going to happen? When the round starts, the opponent Pokemon that are here will likely start to hit Torkoal, which means that Charmeleon will walk one case forward, and then the opposing team will keep hitting Torkoal, and Charmeleon will be able to hit them without being hit himself because the focus is already onto Torkoal. So this unit that is more tanky will actually be able to take the hits for Charmeleon. So Charmeleon has enough time to prepare for his Blast Burn and ends up being able to use its ability. Whereas if you had Charmeleon in the front and Torkoal in the back, Charmeleon would have taken the focus, and then Torkoal would have walked up, but Charmeleon would likely have died a lot faster than Torkoal, which means that Charmeleon would not have been able to use his Blast Burn. Whereas Torkoal is so tanky that despite being focused, it is very likely that it is able to use its smoke screen before it dies. Okay? So look at the range first to know where you should place your Pokemon, and then look at the defensive stats, which may also help you. Now let's say we have for a lot of melee units. We have also the Growlithe, and we have also the Flareon. And we place them in the front line like this, and Charmander in the back line over here. What is going to happen? Round starts and the enemy starts focusing these three. Then Charmander cannot walk up because all of the spots are taken. So Charmeleon will have to walk there, and then maybe even there to start hitting the opponent because it was blocked by the 3 units you had in front of him. So you cannot really protect a melee unit with 3 other melee units by getting it behind them like this. If you want to do something like this, what you can do is spread your front line like this and have, let's say, Charmeleon over here. So what will happen is these 3 units will take the focus, but maybe the opposing team is actually over there, or maybe it's actually over there. So what will happen is that likely one of these side units will need to walk towards the enemy team to start hitting them. Like this, or whatever. And one of them will probably not, just because the enemy team will be either on one side or on the other. So what will happen is that, let's say the enemy team is on the left side. Then the fight starts. Come on. Torkoal and Flareon gets the focus. Growlithe walks over here to start hitting. And Charmander, that has been protected and didn't take aggro because it was on the second line, can actually walk in the middle here, not get focused, and prepare for his Blast Burn. So I call this spreading. When I place my units further away from each other to purposefully leave some empty spots for my other melee units that I want to protect to walk into. Right? If I place like this, it is actually somewhat difficult for Charmeleon to walk and start hitting the enemies. If I place like this, Charmeleon can easily manage just that. Okay? And if the enemy units were more in the middle of the board, what would have happened is Flareon moves over here and Charmeleon moves over here. Okay? This will not stop you from sometimes having a weird-ass pathfinding happen. Like, let's say the enemy team was all the way over here, then your units will do something like this, and then something like this, and then something like this, and the fight is over here, and then it comes over here. May happen, you know, but if you do the same thing in the middle of the board, it is less likely to happen, rather than doing it on a side. Right, so we've covered the melee. What about the ranged units? So we call a ranged unit whichever unit has more than one range. Let's take with fire the example of Lampent. Lampent is one of the highest ranged units in the game with 3 range, which means that from this spot it can actually hit some units that are 3 squares away. So from here it can actually hit a unit that will be 1, 2, 3 squares over here or over here. So you can actually corner this guy and he will be able to hit the enemy front line over here. So this guy can be extremely safe with his 3 range. It is a very precious stat, and to compensate for this high range, as you can see, it has, compared with Charmeleon, a lot less HP and less resistances. Which means that if you were to put it in the front line, because it has so little tanky stats, it would likely die extremely fast. So you have to put it in the back line to further protect it. This is what we call a glass cannon. A cannon because it hits like a truck from afar, but glass because if it gets hit, it is very likely to break extremely easily. It's a very, very specific archetype of unit. You have some other units like Solrock, for example, that only have 2 range, and they are still slightly weaker than the equivalent that are supposed to be tankier. So Solrock and Torkoal are supposed to be the same type of unit, but you see 20 less HP and 6 less armor, which means that Torkoal can tank a lot more hits. But to compensate for this, Torkoal has a lot less AD damage than Solrock. Okay, Solrock deals a lot more damage from further away, but in exchange, it dies a lot faster. Makes sense? So Torkoal, that has only 2 range, if you place it here, it cannot actually hit a unit that is 1, 2, 3 squares in front. So before it can hit this potential unit, it will have to walk 1 step forward. So with the unit that have only 2 range over here, the best placement you can give them is the middle row. Okay? Back row for 3 ranged, middle row for 2 ranged. And sometimes you can do the exact same thing that you did with the melee units and have 1 ranged unit further away, even though it is with only 2 range. We'll discuss these cases later. Okay, so I have my Charmeleon over here because I wanted to cast. It is between my front line, and I want to have my ranged unit not further away from your front line, but behind it. Why is that? Because imagine the enemy has like a Silvereye and it's over there, right? And let's say I positioned this way. What can happen is actually Silvereye walks over here, then over here, completely ignores my front line and start focusing my glass cannon. And this is exactly what I want to avoid at all costs. It is less likely to happen like this, but since the pathfinding is somewhat random, it can still walk forward and then it is 50-50. Either it goes on the left or it goes on the right, and sometimes it will go on the right and focus your glass cannon. 50-50. So you want to avoid this. So if I position this way, I will rather have my glass cannon over there. And then, because I want my tankiest unit to be protecting my backline, I will probably have my Flareon over here instead of my Growlithe, which will actually change if I evolve my Growlithe into Arcanine, because then Arcanine have better stats, so then I will swap these two units and have my Arcanine protect my range. Okay? Does this make sense? Easy enough. Do not hesitate to actually replay the beginning of this video, because we talked about a lot of concepts. But let's go even further. Imagine I were to have my front line very widespread like this. So the entire enemy comp is starting to eat my front line, and I can protect my carry. And so I will decide to make one carry on the right and one carry on the left. What would then happen? Well, my Lampent will start hitting the enemy that front line that is over here. My Solrock would have to walk one step forward and will start hitting the front line that is over here. What does this mean? It means that my two carries will hit different units. We call this spreading the damage. And this is something that you usually want to avoid. What you want to do with your damage is create a focus. You want to have your two carries on the same side, like this, so when the round starts, they actually pick the same unit, likely over here, and hit it together so it dies faster. What does this create? This creates a situation where this unit will likely die before it can cast its spell. Whereas, if you spread the damage, these two units will die at the same times, but slightly later, so they will likely be able to launch their spell before they die. So with your damage, you want to create focus. But with your tanks, you likely want to spread the focus that they take. You want them to be able to survive a little before they die, so they cast the spell. So you want to avoid the enemy focusing one tank most of the time, and you want your carries to focus one single enemy unit. So usually you spread your tanks and you pack your carries. Okay? This is what is supposed to happen most of the time. Now, let's go even further. Let's look at some items, shall we? We have some items that will actually define the way you place your units. First, let's talk about the green orb. Holder and adjacent allies regain 4% of their max health every second. What is an adjacent ally in Pokemon Auto Chess? I'll place Torkoal in the middle here. All adjacent allies of Torkoal are 1 square away from it, which means this entire square is technically what is considered adjacent to Torkoal. So, if I am playing this green orb, what I will likely want to do is give it to a middle range unit. So this guy, place it here, pack the front line in front of it, even have some of my backliners behind it. Let's say I also have, what could I have? Cyndaquil, I will post it over here. And let's say I also have, what is 3 range here? There's only 2 range units. Never mind. Let's say I have Volcarona, 3 ranged, and I place it over here. What does this do? It means that all of these units will actually benefit from my item. If I spread my front in this situation, I will be able to heal Torkoal, but Arcanine and Flareon will not benefit from the adjacent ally healing. Right? So in this situation, it is actually better to pack your front line because it will benefit from the region rather than spreading it. Make sense? We keep going. There are some items that only affect adjacent allies, in the same row, like the Gracidia flower, in the same row. What does this mean? Adjacent allies in the same row are, for this guy, these two, and not the middle line here, because this is not the same line, right? So I would want to place the units that need to benefit from the Gracidia flower in the same row on the sides of Volcarona. This pretty much forces you to pack your damage once you've done this. And even though we've said before that Soul Rock is only 2 range, so we'll have to walk further in the front line before it starts hitting, I will then place it in the back line just to have it benefit from the Gracidia flower. Okay? I would rather have the 20% more attack speed than having it start here and hit like 1 second earlier. I will place it further back just to benefit from these items. Which means that if you have several items that actually force you to place your units together, you want to pack them. Gracidia flowers boost both the allies on the same row. Lucky Egg does the exact same thing. So you want to have your Lucky Egg and your Gracidia flower on the same unit. Okay? So it actually helps you boost. You have a booster in the middle, and the 2 units on the side get giga boosted and can actually benefit from like 3 other items. I place random items, you know. So this unit will actually benefit from 3 plus 1, 2 items. It benefits from 5 items. It is a gigantic boost. So this is a configuration that you likely will want to do sometimes. Imagine you have a Gracidia flower and another Gracidia flower. Then you will want to place your carries like this maybe. And these 2 carries will benefit from double Gracidia flower. Okay? But you can also do something like this. Let's say I play Clava. With this positioning, 4 units benefit from 1 level of Gracidia, and the middle unit will benefit from 2 levels of Gracidia. So you have 1 giga boosted carry in the middle, with 2 supports that spread their support over more units, which is something you sometimes will want to do if you have a lot of different carries. Sometimes you will want to do this with double Gracidia. So these are very, very specific positioning situations that you just want to be aware can exist. Okay? So the stats influence your positioning, the range influence it, and the items you hold also influence your positioning. There's a lot of things that actually influence your positioning. But that's not the end of it. Let's now talk about some very specific abilities. The AOE abilities for area of effect, which means that these spells actually hit an entire area. Let's see Ho-Ho for example. Ho-Ho hits the entire area around the target with 80 damage, which means if it hits Torkoal with the ability, it will also hit all of these units adjacent to Torkoal. If Torkoal were to be here, Ho-Ho would actually hit this entire square of units, which can be devastating. When you face an opponent in the late game that have a super carry that hits in AoE like Ho-Ho, you will want to spread all of your units as much as you can to avoid them being in the same square. Let's say I position like this. If Flareon gets the focus, Ho-Ho will hit 3 units with his spell. If Arcanine gets the focus, it will only hit 1 unit. And most of my carries are out of the square of my front line. So my carries are less likely to get hit. But imagine one of my carry were to be focused somehow. Then even if one of my carries were to be focused, the area of effect will not hit the next carry on the grid. Whereas if I position like this, imagine Lampen gets the focus, Oho can actually kill the 3 carries all together at once, which I want to avoid. So against very specific area of effect, what we call AoE abilities, you will need to spread your units further, even your carries. It is better to have your damage spread but survive the ability of Oho than having your damage focused but all of your carries die with one single cast. Only makes sense, right? So look at your opponent's carry, see if it does area of effect damage, and if it does, you may want to spread your units to avoid all of them dying together. If the opponent doesn't have a strong area of effect, you pack your carries to create a focus. But if it has a big area of effects, you spread your carries, even if it spreads the focus, to avoid them dying. Again, only makes sense. Some units, like Typhlosion over here, have a spell that hits in a line. It hits in a line and damages all enemy Pokemon hit. Okay? So, you want to place this unit in a spot where they will hit the most units possible. Let's say I were to place Typhlosion over here, and it focuses this unit. Then when it casts its spell, it will go in this direction and only hit 3 units. If it starts focusing here, it will do this line and only hit a few units. Whereas if I place Typhlosion over here and it starts focusing this unit, then the line will be slightly longer and I will be able to hit more units. So for these units that hit in a line, the 2 best spots on the board will be these 2 side spots. And then another decent spot would be this one. Okay? Symmetrical left and right side. These 2 spots are better for a unit like Typhlosion. They are even better than the middle spot over here. Why is that? Because Typhlosion will then be, in this situation, only able to make lines that are this kind of long, whereas here you can even imagine a frontliner gating over there, and then the line will be gigantic and you will hit the entire board like this. So you will be able to make drastic damage. Teamfight Tactics player maybe remember a few years ago the Vel'Koz positioning that was always in the middle row over here, and you protected it like this. You know, this very specific positioning was the best for Vel'Koz, and Vel'Koz had a spell that was an entire death ray in one single direction. Exact same concept. Typhlosion it's in a line, you want to have it on one of these sides. It's even better than further away. Okay, if you had a 3 range unit that hits in a line, you want to place it on the middle row. That is advanced and very specific. But it is something that you, if you want to climb the ladder further and further and further, want to think about. You want to have it in the back of your mind. What else? Is there something further? Yes, indeed there is. In this game there is a lot of different synergies, and one of them is Dark. What Dark does is any Dark unit, as we'll be able to see soon, Dark units jump at the start of the fight to the farthest unit reachable. Absol placed over here will jump on the other side of the board to the furthest ranged unit that exists. So, if you were to play against Absol, with your fire comp, and you position your carries like this way, with your front line over here, and then let's say you have another frontliner or like Fennekin over here. What will happen? Absol is over here. It will dash next to the furthest unit, which means completely avoid your entire front line, and it will dash all the way over here and start focusing your backline. So when playing against Dark, what you will want to do with your units is place them more like this. So the Absol cannot instantly dash next to your carry. It can only dash over here in these squares, and it will not be able to focus Lampent instantly. It will first have to focus one of your other units. So you pack your units, even your front line, you place it further back. That's the best placement you can do against Dark, very specifically. If you place against Dark, you make a back lane square like this. So the Dark units cannot dash on your main carry. The same thing happens when you play against Flying. Let's play 2 flying units, like these two. What Flying does, look at Flying 8, Skydive. The flying units perform a skydive attack dealing 150% physical damage on landing on their target. So the flying unit will actually fly, dive onto a unit and place next to it. But because these 3 squares are taken, Moltres cannot skydive onto Lampent, because then it would not have any spot to go to. So by packing this way, and let's say we are in the late game, we pack this way with completely random units, Moltres will not be able to hit any of these 4 units. So here you place your carry, here you place your frontliners, and this actually saves this entire area from being hit by the flying enemy units when they skydive. So this square packing is useful against these 2 specific comps, Flying 8, that is pretty popular, and Dark, that is also pretty popular. And it also somewhat works against Wild, because Wild units move super fast. So it's almost like they dash, you know? It's almost like they dash. However, remember that against a ho-ho that hits in AoE, this positioning will become very weak. So when you expect to fight against Flying, you pack. And if you play against the Flying comp, and then next turn you're likely to play against the Fire comp, you move all of your units and you spread them. Okay? Adapt to the opponent you expect to be facing next. Remember that unless you are the only 2 players alive, you cannot face the same player twice, which means that if you make a ball of units to protect yourself from the Dark player, and then you instantly fight the Dark player, you get spread out again, because you won't be playing against him the next round. Right? Adapt your positioning to the enemy comp you are supposed to face soon. Some other synergy specific we will talk about now. Fire, when you activate Fire, every auto attack you make burns the opponent. So you may actually want to spread your focus, just because the more different units you hit, the more burns you apply. So you actually maximize your burn damage by spreading your focus. So Fire is one of these rare comps that sometimes want to spread the focus rather than pack it, just to maximize the burn. Another comp that does the exact same is Poison. See Poison? 100% chance to poison the enemy unit hit, so you may want to spread your poison unit to poison the most units possible. Okay, very specific case of a single frontliner that want to take the solo focus. Let's say you have one carry that has probably the entirety of all your tank items. Let's say this Torkoal has, where is it? A King's Rock, but it also has the Rocky Helmet, and it even has the Assault Vest. This guy is immortal. So even if you have more frontliners, you will likely want to place your units like this. So Torkoal takes the entire focus, tanks the hell with his items, and then the rest of your frontline then walks over there and starts hitting the enemy. Anyway, these units that are a lot less tanky than Torkoal won't die. Torkoal is giga tanky, so he won't die. And then you can make a big hit to your opponent. Okay, sometimes where you have a giga tanky unit, you may want to place it this way. What else? What else would there remain to say? Do I have anything that I have forgotten? Any very specific situation? Yes, I have one. Let's talk about Wonderbox. Wonderbox can give you a unit any item in the game, 2 of them, which means that technically there is a chance the unit gets a Gracidia, or a Lucky Egg, or a Green Orb. So to the unit that has the Wonderbox, even though the Wonderbox isn't technically an area of effect damage items, it can give you area of effect items when applying. So you may want to have your Wonderbox holder in between 2 other units, rather than having him onto the side. Just because if you end up with a Gracidia thanks to this item, then when you are in the middle you will boost 2 units. If you are in the side you will only boost 1. Okay? So Wonderbox you want to place in between 2 units, just in case you get a Gracidia or a Lucky Egg. And this can very definitely make a difference. This can very definitely make a difference. Also, keep in mind that the more centered you are on the board for a frontliner, the more likely you are to get some focus. The safest frontliner is actually this one on the side, which means if you have a melee unit that wants to be a carry, you want to place it further to the side, and then it will hit this unit, and then hit this unit, and then this unit, and then this unit, and it will actually create its way through the enemy comp, while most of the focus will be taken by probably these 3 guys, at least at the beginning of the fight. For which comp is this useful? Monsters. Monsters have pretty much only melee carries. Pretty much only. So you will likely, when playing monsters, you will have a comp that resembles this, with everyone being melee, so everyone is in the front line. So your main carry, let's say it's mobile, you will want to place it on the side here, rather than on the middle. So it will actually be able to fight this way through the enemy comp without taking much focus. You can also just do the same trick that I talked about earlier and have it over here and then walk forward. But there will be a moment where this becomes increasingly difficult to do because you have more and more melee units. Imagine you have activated monster 8. Let's say this way. No, this is a bad example because this unit is dark, but let's say this way. Then imagine you place here, the entire enemy composition is here, and then this guy walks, and this guy walks, and walks, and walks, and walks, and it will actually start to bug out over here, over here, over here, because it cannot find a spot. Because this Ariyama walked before before Mobile took the spot and then Mobile did some weird shit. That's something that happens with heavy melee comps. So in these kind of comps, having your carry on the side of the front line here may be a better option. Okay? It may be a better option. Even try to have it on the opposite side of the enemy team. If the enemy team plays on the right, place it on the left, and then it will be likely to work like this, boom, 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 start hitting. Maybe it's even luckier and it goes all the way to the carries. And it will be a lot less likely to go this way, because it will try to hit the furthest enemy, and the optimal path will be this path. Okay? Better than this. All day. Better than this. In this specific situation where your entire front line is actually taken. With monsters, you may actually also play this guy, which is dark. So you will have your entire front line over here, and your dark unit will jump to the back line. So it will not be blocked by your front line. This is things that you may want to consider. When you have a dark unit, you do not need to have the dark trait activated for this unit to jump. Even if the dark trait isn't activated, Larvitar will actually jump into the enemy team. So whether you play dark or not, if your unit has the dark synergy as a side, you can place it in the back line and it will dash. You do not need to place it on the front line. If you place it on the front line and there is a unit directly in front of it, it will start eating this unit and it will not dash. So if you want to dash, you place in the back line. If you do not want to dash, you place in the front line. Do not be trapped. Guzzlord is the only dark unit in the game that cannot jump. So if you place Guzzlord, that is a dark unit, here in the backline, it will not dash. It will slowly walk towards the enemy composition. So Guzzlord is the only dark unit you want to always place in the front line. This is a very specific situation, but if you are a dragon, dark or monster player, keep that in mind. And technically it fits into the positioning video, so I'm taking that into account. Finally, one last unit I need to talk about. Kyogre. Look at Kyogre spells. A wave travels horizontally across the battlefield, dealing damage to all the enemy Pokemon hit. What does this ability do? It hits an entire line. So when playing against Kyogre, you want to avoid having a full line of carries in the back row, because then one cast of Kyogre can kill all of your carries. You will want to spread your carries, some in the back line and some in the middle line. Okay? So then when Kyogre casts, it either hits these 3 units or these 2 units, but it doesn't hit all of them at once. Kyogre can kill entire games just by one-shotting all of your carries. When you face this one guy, be careful. Do not put all of your carries on the same line. Put them on 2 different lines. And that will save you from this guy. Water is somewhat popular. So you will meet Kyogre a lot of games actually. This is a unit that you will face a lot. So when you see it, keep that in mind. Place your carries on 2 rows, not on only one. And I think that is it. I covered most of the topics. Because teaching is repeating, remember, pack when you want to protect these carries, spread when you want to spread the damage, but pack the carries when you want to create a focus. If you want a melee unit to be protected, create some spots, and then the melee placed units take the focus, and this unit works forward and can fight without being hit. If you have an entire line of units, place the unit onto the side or onto the side. This carry will be less focused than all of the others. Look at the range of a unit to know if it is a melee unit or a range unit. If you only have 2 range, where is it? This guy no, not this guy. well, if you only have two range, whichever unit it is, it's a middle range unit rather than a back range unit. Position depending on the enemy team you face, depending on the synergies you are playing, depending on the items you are wearing. There's a lot of things to consider. Okay? Placing is one of the most skilled techniques you can have in this game. What makes the difference between the best players and the very good players is very likely the way they position. This is what makes the difference between Obscuros and Crabhammer. Right? Very likely. So, I hope you enjoyed the content and you learned a lot of things. This was a very long video, but we covered a ton and a ton and a ton of topics. Do not hesitate to watch it several times. Tell me if you like the format, and I'll see you later on stream and for other tutorials because there's a lot to cover. Bye people, have a wonderful day.